Today's episode is sponsored by Some Edibles CBD-infused products. That's SUM Edibles and can be found at
someedibles.com.
They have a variety of yummy treats, including
vegan organic gummies,
brown buttered chocolate chip cookies,
and marshmallow cereal bars, just to name a few.
For fans of the podcast, you can use the promo code WIFE, that's W-I-F-E, to receive 10% off your order.
Again, promo code WIFE for 10% off your order.
So, head to someedibles.com today. Hi, this is Sarah, the Drunken Housewife of Drunken Housewife Reviews.
And I'm her host, husband, Ian, and I try to keep her online as much as I can, although it can be difficult.
It's a full-time job. It is a full-time job. Today, because it's before noon and I'm not an alcoholic, it's Irish coffee or Irish iced coffee because it's 80 freaking degrees here in Indiana. And of course, humidity level like 500%. So today we are interviewing, I've been waiting for this interview, Pete Turner.
Yes.
Podcaster, combat vet, and former U.S. spy. I'm sure there's lots of stuff that I would love to know, but you can't tell me or you'd have to kill me. And interesting note for everybody. Yes, he is in a tent. He's in a tent in his backyard. So this is like our first outdoor tent interview.
It is.
I'm finding that really fun. What led to the tent office? Is it just something that you love to do, or?
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing. During the pandemic, our house is, a very modest house. It's 1,400 square feet, and we had, two people running businesses out of it, myself and my girlfriend, and we had two people going to school full time, and so it just gets loud when I'm in there talking to people at all times and everything else. And so we have an enormous yard, right? And so the idea was let's do something outside, but we weren't sure, like, did we want to build something? And so my girlfriend's like, why don't you work out of a tent? You worked out of a tent most of your career anyhow. And so here we are. And I love it.
I was going to say, second home basically for you. Because you are a combat vet. Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. Am I leaving out any?
Yeah, give us a rundown.
Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. Those are the main things. There's a couple other things here and there. I went to Egypt post 9/11, like right afterwards in October.
Okay.
And so there's that as well. But it's just it's a mixed bag of experiences, and I've deployed a lot. Pretty much as not only have I deployed a lot, I went off the camp probably as much as you'll see anybody else do for hours and hours and hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a lot of time off of the American camps as well as being deployed. It's pretty rare to find someone like me.
Awesome. Which probably led to people use you now. You call yourself a cultural consultant.
Yeah.
Basically helping Department of State, Department of Defense, other leaders navigate because different cultures. Because what is okay here in the United States in another country culture is insulting. And that's got to be a delicate, little maze.
Well, let me delicately twist how you think about these things. This is sort of what I do, right? So rather than worrying about offense and getting something wrong, it's okay to get something wrong. It's not okay to do it on purpose, right?
Okay.
So when you go, if I was to come to Indiana as a California guy, we have slightly different cultures. There's things that are dramatically different, in this moment or that moment. I'm not supposed to know what it's like to be from Indiana, right?
Yeah.
And so when you go to some other place, the idea is that you can first off realize there are different cultures and people do things in a completely different way than you would do. They've got different experiences, different elders, different norms, and you have to understand that exists. Then you have to be able to see it, and then you have to be able to accept that what you see is how they do it. Like if you see someone eating out of a dumpster, right? You can say, why would you ever do that? Well, that person got there through a series of decisions, good or bad, doesn't matter. That is where they are at. right? And if you want to change the condition of someone, whether they're eating out of a dumpster or they're the Taliban trying to fight people, you have to understand their position before you can begin to nudge them out of it. And so what I talk about in culture is using culture to your advantage, to identify the cultural paths that people take. And if you can accomplish your goal along their path, boy, it's a whole lot easier than coming in and just doing it your way. So it doesn't mean that you want to do things that are illegal or abusive or any of those things. It just means, you know, when the Afghans are going to throw a party, all right, what do we have to do? Nothing. Oh, I'm just a guest. What do I bring? How do I do it? Ask these questions so they can instruct you, because you never want to try to out Iraq and Iraqi or out New York and New York, right? And so a lot of people, and rightfully so, because we really are not great at this. A lot of people think about like, oh, what hand gestures do I make? How do I sit at a meal? And those things are fine. I'm not saying don't learn them. What I'm saying is don't be afraid to go and experience that culture and just accept that where they're at is where they're at. And it's inherently not a bad thing to understand those things, to make mistakes and learn.
Oh yeah, I'm fully behind as far as like soaking in what's happening and just observing and just seeing what's going on, as opposed to, yeah, I'm here now and I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. Just soak it all in and see what is actually happening.
Yeah. Like just come at it. I mean, this is what I'm hearing is like, come at it with, you know, an attitude of I'm going to respect your ways. Yeah. I may not know them all, but I'm going to do my best to show you respect for your traditions, your culture. You know, if I screw up, I'm sorry, but you know, no,
don't even think of it negatively like that either too. Like, okay, here's an example. In the Midwest, you guys have a guy, Pulaski. You might have Pulaski Day. You might have a Pulaski Street. That person does not exist on the West Coast, right? I know it because I lived in Chicago, and I'm like, who's Pulaski, right? And so there's all these people that are regional culture, you know, iconifies or remembers or whatever, right? If I was to come there and be like, you're stupid, that guy's a Polak, and you know, and I just rejected it and said, why don't you follow this, I don't know, person, think of someone from California who's absolutely odious to you, right? Yeah. And I'm like, why don't you pick this person as the person to celebrate? And you're like, are you crazy?
Yeah.
Right? So, it's more an openness, like, hey, you have a street named Pulaski. Who was Pulaski? And then if they know, they know, and if they don't, they don't. But you're just trying to accept what's there. And then here's the flip side of that is like, oh, you know what? We have a street called El Camino Real, and it goes from like way up north in the coast all the way down into Mexico. And it's like the street of the royals because it went all the way back to Mexico City. And we could tell you all about these things, right? So when you look at culture, you don't look at it negatively. You look at it through like a joint fence building process. How do you make yourself familiar to your partner you're talking to? How do you find those things? You explain some of your things, they explain some of yours, and then you slowly find ways to work together. Because the thing with culture is if you don't understand their goals and their decision-making process, and they don't understand your goals and decision-making process, you get outcomes like this. You get outcomes like corruption, incompetence, maybe passive aggressiveness. These are signs, these are hallmarks of a bad cultural congruence, and you can stop right there because you're not likely to reliably and repeatably accomplish your goal until you slow down and find more collaboration. And it's okay then at that point to do that. Like, hey, like we're going down a wrong path. This person thinks I'm forcing them to do something. Let's stop and slow down. If you have time. Sometimes you don't have time. But if you have time, that's how you find that cultural congruence, and you try to work on helping each other in a way that makes sense to that decision-making and goal-seeking process.
Now, how many times have you had somebody reach out for help that they really should have reached out for help from you like months ago, and now they're in the middle of like, you know, quicksand and they're sinking fast, and you're just like, I don't know if I can get you out of this trouble, dude. But
well, I mean, I don't know how good I am at fixing that problem. You know, like if they're already in quicksand, I can try to help them. More like, how do you identify and avoid the quicksand in the future, right? And so, if there's a company that has bad culture, okay, all we can do right now is just work on. Look, culture hates design. right? People always want to this. Like when people are like, oh, we've got a great culture here. I'm like, oh, okay, great. How did you get it? And they're like, oh, well, we designed it. And I'm like, okay, this is a
No.
bummer,
Yeah.
right? That these things sometimes happen, but I'm always about reliable and repeatable, right? Can you reliably create a culture and get the good output you want? Probably not. And then here's how you test it. You have a guy like me go out, talk to the people that, like, let's say you've got an internal corporate culture problem, right? And so I work for the CEO, and I go and I talk to the folks at the bottom of the pyramid, and I'm like, what's it like here?
Yeah.
You know, what's the corporate culture? And if they spit back to me like the parroted thing, I'm like, yeah. But what actually is it? Like day to day, what is your life like? You know?
Yeah.
And I do what I do as a spy, and I talk to them, and they start saying, well, let me tell you how horrible it is here. And as the CEO,
Gotcha.
that's not what you want, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not to denigrate the company or the people. It's to say, here are problems that you have. These are people problems. They're extremely expensive. They're going to be hidden from you because the person needs the job more than they need to be happy.
Yeah.
And again, no CEO wants that. They're like, how do I create enriched people, right?
Yeah.
And build this thing that I'm trying to build. You know, we got all these posters on all the walls saying, you know, like whatever it is, team or whatever. Like, F that. I hate it here. But I'll never say that because I'm going through a divorce. I'm struggling financially, you know, and you're like, right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the thing that I do is, okay, you have this problem. All I can do is start to help you identify. Because my biggest thing is like, I'm kind of like Bad News Pete when I do this cultural work, because I'm like, there are a lot of problems. How would you like to solve it, right?
You're like, hang on. Okay. You know.
Yeah. And I don't have all the answers. I wouldn't presume to, because again, I don't know. I can identify your problem, and I'm glad to work with you on it and try to work on a way out of it. But it's not Pete that has the solution. I'm just saying that you have this cultural problem, and it's drawing away resources and people, right?
Yeah.
A disgruntled employee can be at your company for their entire career, 30 years, you know? And who's patient with 30 years in these days? Like, they're probably disgruntled. My daughter works for a government, and I'm like, as long as, and she's young, she's 25, right? So as long as you can take it for 25 years, and believe me, at the end, you're gonna hate it, right?
Yeah.
You'll be very successful, you know, and you'll stay there. But like, you know, you have this thing where you're just slowly building this pile of like, I can't stand it here anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And you don't want that when you're trying to run a good organization.
I have had jobs, where you're just like, dear Lord, please get me through the day without stabbing somebody. That's all I'm asking. It's just like,
it'll drive you to drink.
Really? It drives you to drink? No.
There it is. Look how good of a guest I am. I teed you up for your thing.
There you go.
Yeah, because I work for one organization that was led by somebody that like started all these fires and looked at you and went, can you put those out for me? And it's like, you know, or I have a huge presentation tomorrow. Can you get it together for me? And it's like, how long have you known about this presentation that you had to do?
Right.
You know, it's been on your calendar for a month.
Yep.
And
it's fine to like push hard on a deadline and like, hey, you know, we need so and so to come through, whoever that person is. It's another thing just to drop it in their lap, give them all the cost. It's just, you know, you have to manage those things better. There's a lot of these examples. One of them is if you have an employee incentive program and someone earns the incentive and they don't take it, you know, you're like, we don't think about that. Like, hey, they're not going to go take the Mexico trip. Right. You know, and it's like, no, you've got a problem here where someone's a top earner. Like, one of the things that causes a lot of problems in organizations is I'll ask the person, like legitimately, what do you think's ahead for you 3 months, 3 years? Like, what are you and your boss working on for you to get to the next step? And the vast majority of the people are like, I have no idea. And I'm like, is it more likely that you leave this company, or is it more likely that you stay? And they're like, you know what, good opportunity, and I'm gone. And I'm like, do you think you have to promote? It's a great question. Do you think you have to promote yourself? And always say yes, right? And it's a bit of a trick question because I expect them to say yes, right? But that yes matters. Like, hey, CEO, do you want your employees to believe the only way to get promoted around here is to promote themselves? And they're going to be like, trick question. They're like, no, that's not what I want. I want
Yeah.
to develop my people, right?
Yeah.
And when you say you promote from within and people feel like they have to leave to get promoted, ooh, that is expensive.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Because I know, like, I've had several jobs. But like one place I worked, they hired in like a new director, and this person, it was like after she got in there and was in there for like a month, people started quitting. Just quit,
Mhm.
quit. And in like a 2-month period, out of a crew of 20, they've lost 7 people,
Mm.
you know? And to me, as the owner of the business, I would be like, what's going on? What's happening here? Why did almost half of my workforce in 2 months leave?
Right.
And every single person would say, it's her. It's her. She came in and she took one look at how we were doing things and she was like, no, you're doing it wrong. And you're going to do it my way.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we were all like, but we work like clock. I mean, we were like a well-oiled machine. We had it down. We knew, oh, you need a break, I will cover, for you. And then you can cover, we had it down. We were great. And then she came in and she's like, nope, everything's getting redone. And it's like, how many times have you had to deal with that sort of situation where somebody knew, like a manager or somebody came in and was like, nope, we're going to do everything a different way.
Yeah.
And then,
that kind of problem is
downhill,
very, very, very common. One of the things that I say is you can't presume to improve the condition of something you refuse to understand the condition of, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe you guys were a well-oiled machine, but you needed some tuning. Tuning is not wrecking, right?
Yeah.
Tuning is not you're doing it wrong. It's like, oh, you guys do this way. And if you're a professional and you come in and someone's doing something and accomplishing, I don't know, 70% of the goal, and you're like, you actually are already doing pretty well. Can I improve what you're doing?
Exactly.
That's your job, is to bring in that modular approach and go, do we need someone here? Or how many times, I love this one. How many times have you been in an environment where they're like, hey, we're going to let Dave go. Can you cover Dave's work? And you're like, for like a couple of days, maybe. I'm glad to help. And you're like, no one's going to actually get this job. We're just, and there's no money, there's no title. It's just more work. And you're like, did you think I wasn't working before?
Yeah. And I read about that happening a lot, where it's like, oh, you can actually do the work of 3 people for no more money or promotion or anything like that. Right. So why should we hire other people when we're getting it out of you? And it's like, then that employee is just like, you don't respect me. You don't,
and maybe that person
value me.
Is a bit of a loafer, right? Well, why would you give them that much more work? Maybe cut them loose, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just saying, hey, fantastic employee, why don't you do more work? Do all of it a little less better, right? Leave off things that you should get to improve the company. And so, look, I don't want to absolve employees from doing what they're supposed to do. But if you're not going to lead well, then people are going to perform at the level that they're at. And if you don't recognize that and you can't promote them, and if you can't provision what your company needs to grow, then that's a big problem. And people should be leaving your company, because you're not a business that's growing and healthy. You're a business that's, trying to figure out how to survive.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because deep down, I really want to hear all of your spy stories, like all of them. Like, I would love to sit down over a beer with you and just be like, okay, I swear to God, I won't tell anybody anything. Tell me everything. But do you get that a lot when people find out that you were a spy? People are like, oh my gosh, tell me all the juicy, stuff. And you're just like, I can't.
Funny. I started saying that I was a spy a long time ago, even when I was working as a spy, because for the most part, no one would believe me anyhow. They're like, nah, that's not real. And I'm like, look, what am I supposed to tell you? This is what I do.
Yeah.
I will say this. I approach the spy game in a different way than most people. And I learned this when I was in Bosnia. There is so much information out there, right? That's valuable to the command, right? That's what a spy does. Is I gather information, and then they decide if it's what they need, because someone has to take my information and do something with it for it to be important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have to interpret it and use it.
Yeah.
Appropriately.
Yeah. So we're all trying to find the thing that's going to give the commander insight that they need to win, right? It's not, and I would say it's usually not threat related. So yes, I'm worried about bombs. I'm desperate to find out, prevent the attack, and I'm always got my ear on the ground for that. But if you look, if I was to come to Indiana and like Pete, find the most dangerous guy in this state, I probably could find that person, right? Like who's not in jail. I'm not talking about going to jail. I'm like, there he is. But I could probably find that person. Maybe I could become friends with them, but I'm gonna need a lot of time to do that, right?
Yeah.
And that guy probably in the first 4 weeks of me looking for him is not gonna show up and go, hey, I'm the bad guy.
Hey Pete, how you doing? Yeah.
I'm gonna blow stuff up, right? They usually don't do that. They don't want you to know, especially like when you're in an Army uniform, right?
Yeah.
And so what I decided to do was like, there's so much information around here where like, can I make us be less of the problem, right? This is this culture stuff too, right? Can I identify areas where we're making mistakes of what we think we're accomplishing? And so I would go out like, and you'd have this asset doing something like, hey, we're going to provide fresh water to all these villages. And I would be out there and I'd talk to the locals and I'm like, tell me about this water. And they'd say, hey, you know what? It's great. We need water. But the problem is the minute you guys leave, that guy's going to come try to take it or, whatever, charge us money for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next guy's like, hey, by the way, all that water is great. We have no sewer system. And you're like, oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
So maybe we can deal with the guy who's a threat, who's going to try to extort money or do something gangster with that water. But how about that sewer problem? And the long-term impact of that, right? So I bring both of these problems to the commander, and maybe the guy who's charging money for water, maybe he's not a bad guy. Maybe that's his role. Maybe, who knows, right? But you have these competing things. And the biggest problem is we're going to go to a village. We created this problem in this scenario, right? We brought water a place where there wasn't water. I'm not saying they don't need it, but we think, hey, we solved this problem. Next problem, let's go on, right? Yeah. And so that's the fastest way for a military to lose is to think all these things that you're doing are winning. And here's the other thing I realized by being gone and deployed a lot was I watched each unit come through, right? And as they came in and tried to do things, they would make the same exact mistakes. They were equally ill prepared. And so my focus really shifted on how do I get these guys to be less harmful to their own mission? You often hear people say, oh, it's 21-year wars. It's worse than that because we have total amnesia as to what has happened before. So they don't link together. Right? They're completely independent. And so you see these mistakes. So yes, I'm looking for threat and I'm looking for bad guys. But more importantly, let's not get you guys to blow yourselves up. There's so many problems that we commit. We are the biggest problem to our success when we deploy. And that's what a lot of the stuff that I do. So it's fascinating and there are definitely some sexy stories, right? There's definitely some crazy stuff that has happened.
I'm sure.
I look forward to your memoirs.
I know. I wish I could get them done. It just takes for damn ever,
Oh, I can only imagine. But now I do have one question for you as a woman. As a woman, I have to know, how many times have you used hey, I'm a spy as a pickup line?
It never works.
It never works.
They never believe me. They never believe me.
Why would they?
I mean,
some guy comes up to you in a bar and
I'm
says
a spy.
That. Why would you believe him? So,
I'm pretty sure all the women were like, sure.
It's the direct approach. Now, look, it's, I can't help but if it makes me sexier that I'm a spy. But yeah, you can't take that direct approach, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm pretty sure if they were like, oh, well, what do you do for the Army? It's classified. They're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it brings to mind one of my favorite scenes from Criminal Minds where the girls are out drinking and, one of them brings this guy over. He says he works for the FBI. And, they ask all these questions. It's classified. It's classified. And they're like, well, can you show us your ID? It's classified. And they start pulling out theirs going, oh, does it look like this? And it's like, I can totally see how many guys have, I'm a spy in a bar and girls are like, yeah. Right. And then here you come along, you actually are.
Yeah.
And, the 20 Joes before you have blown it for you. Because,
there are different, look, everybody who does work and they're all important. right?
Yeah.
But there are very few people like me who've been off the camp and talking to everybody, the Taliban, everybody, right?
Gotcha.
And so when someone says something like, oh yeah, I work with the CIA, chances are I've got way more experience outside the wire talking to locals than they do, even though they're at the CIA, because you could be at the CIA and never leave like an office and not even leave the country, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, this is not to denigrate what anybody does, but when we hear FBI, I don't know, I mean, whatever, right? There's plenty of counterintelligence agents in the FBI who like me, have done a lot of work, but they've done a lot of that work here in the US. Like, oh, I'm an FBI agent, I'm a counterintelligence agent. And the reality is that you might be a counterintelligence agent and within 5 years promote up out of the active role. And now you're an administrative leader of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not sexy. Still
Yeah.
sexy, still cool. But you know, that's the other thing too,
Yeah.
is like when someone says that, it's like, well, what have you done? You know, and I've done this stuff. Like I've gone out. What makes me rare is because of the way I approach my career, which is through happenstance, I stayed at the ground level working, just getting better and better. So like I was talking to this other guy, another counterintelligence agent from the Army, and I'm like, how long does it take to make an agent good? Like no fooling, you can go out of the wire and do well. And he used his exact number of months for deployment time because he thought he had mastered it. I'm like, now think about this. I have 4 times as many months as you. And he's like, good grief, you would get a lot better, right? You know, because you've just done it more.
Yeah.
And so when you're just beginning to cut your teeth, I've got bigger teeth, you know.
Yeah.
No matter what, right? And so that's the whole thing. When like someone says I work at the FBI or CIA or whatever it is, whatever they do, they absolutely are awesome at their job. But in my very specific case, my skill set is super peaky and off the charts because it's not supposed to happen that someone stays in the field as long as I did.
Gotcha.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, with your experience, I would be so tempted to like, pat somebody on the head and go, don't worry, you'll get there. It's okay. You'll get there, or
especially when they say things that are wrong. And I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
That's not right, man. You know?
Yeah. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where somebody just does not listen to you? Like they hire you
all the time. Look,
and then they just, they're like, okay, that's nice. And then they just go and, do so, and you're just sitting back there going, oh, dear God.
It's like counterintuitive. It's like,
why
they
am I here?
in,
why am I here? Why did you hire me?
And then not listen to you. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes that gets me in trouble because I'm honest, right? And I'm like, you guys are not approaching this correctly. And look, there's a lot of ways to do this job. It's a people job, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I hold my peers, we're smart, right? And we have a very important job. We have very unique access. So I hold us to a high standard. And I'll say that. I'm like, look, you guys can get better at this. But right now, how you're doing it, you're losing every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we love is to believe that our intel is so good the commander needs it. And I'm like, how come I have open access to the commander's couch and you don't? I can go in anytime I want and talk to that guy. And I told him it would happen. And he looked at me and he's like, you're right, Pete. I need you here all the time. Mm-hmm. You guys have been with him longer than me. Why is that? And then they get their feelings hurt. And so that does happen. But everybody does get better. And there are some super fantastic people that do this kind of work. And there's areas where I'm not very good at all. I mean, there's all kinds of areas where I'm absolutely not an expert. Like operations, I'm not an expert. I can be in an operation and tell you this sucks. But for me to plan it, oh boy, that's not what I do, right? I go on the operation. So there's a lot of different contextual things that you have to keep track of in this world. But the biggest thing, I guess, and very interesting, I think, when you have someone who's good at bringing back information, you need someone like me above them to make them even better, right? And so you can say, here are the questions that you missed just from reading the report. I bet you didn't ask this question. I bet you didn't ask this question, because you have to always progress the relationship. We want the prize, but the prize is the relationship. It's the trust. And if you can't build big, deep, fat trust, that like is risky as hell, and that person trusts you and you trust them. Build that. Then I need to teach you how to do that, because that's what great agents can do. They get someone who just absolutely adores them, and that's where that charm and the lady getting comes in. And I don't do that to manipulate anybody. I do it through a true approach of what can I do for you? How can I be helpful for you? What do you not like? Whenever I have a source, if it's dangerous, don't show up. If we have to cancel a meeting, I don't care about that. I want to
Yeah.
keep you as safe as you need to be, and I can't be with you all the time. So, I've got to be mindful of their well-being. If I care about their well-being more than my own, I'm going to be an asset to that person.
Now, you're a dad. I
Yeah.
just have to ask, have there been times when your knowledge as, a spy has come in handy catching a lie or, something like that with your child? They're like, no, I'm going to go spend the night at Chucky's house,
Yeah.
And you're like, really? You're not going to
Yeah.
go to the concert that I told you couldn't go to or whatever, I mean, have there been times when in that situation, your kid's just like, God, Dad, I'm not somebody you're supposed to be spying on or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, has it
Yeah,
come in handy?
So, this is one of the areas where I'm not super strong. I'm a pretty good dad, right? But I mostly wasn't there. So when I was with my daughter, I tried to just focus on memories and doing fun things. And I was very lenient because I didn't want to step on, like, her mom and I aren't married anymore, but we're a great divorced couple. We get along fine.
Okay.
I've seen her in the last 6 months. And my daughter, she's done a great job raising my daughter. I only contributed where I could, and really where I contributed was my daughter's mother would say, "Hey, Pete, I can't take this anymore. I'm so frustrated. I've tried all my tricks. Can you try to get my daughter's head straight?" Right, And so
Okay.
I would like call her in front of like, "Well, I'm gonna have to yell at you," and she's like, "I know," and I'm like, listen, and I would never yell at her. I would just say, why are we talking? I was like, well, because Mom is completely out of patience. And I'm like, and is it because I've done the wrong thing? And so I would
Okay.
talk to her like that. And so really when I used my spy skills, it was more like, how can I approach this differently? Because anger and frustration have already been thrown at her, right? And
Yeah.
I know that my daughter's mother is a fantastic mom, right? And so I'm trying, like, if she can't crack this, I need to take a completely different approach. And so that's really where that kind of stuff comes in. I will say this in terms of like being lied to. I'm not a magic person, but there are certain tells, and they're more organizational tells for me, right? Like, if you want to lie to my face, I'll probably believe you because I'm trying to express trust, right? I will see a pattern at some point, but that's not one of my strengths either. It's more like, you're telling me you have my best interests at heart in this organization or whatever. But that's not what's happening. I'm not seeing that, right? And so
Yeah.
my lie detector works on different things. It's pretty good, right? There's certain things I hear, like there's tells, like when someone's talking to the commander and I go, oh wait, what's that? Oh, I'm gonna have to look into that, right? So one of the things I do is we went out, we inoculated all these goats so that they don't get parvo or whatever goats get. I don't know.
Yeah.
And man, the farmers loved it. Ding. I'm like, ooh, did they?
Did
and so
they?
I'll go
Yeah.
there after that operation and I'll say, hey, what happened here a couple of days ago? And they're like, oh man. And then we'll go through that conversation and I bring that back to the commander, and it's not contrary, it's just this other report. Like, hey,
Yeah.
if these farmers were super stoked and they love the government now because of the inoculation program, then I should be able to find that information pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk to a few farmers and they should be like, man, I love this government.
Yeah.
Oh boy. But if I go to that farmer and I say, what was the last thing the government did for you? And they laugh in my face.
Then you're like, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right?
we have
So
an
you see
issue.
the lie there?
Yeah.
And it's not a lie, it's an untruth, right? Because but in Afghanistan and Iraq, we lied to ourselves a lot and we believed our lies. And so again, my lie detector in this case would work on this problem you think you're solving, you ain't solving it. By the way, here's a stack of the last 4 units that did the same exact operation. Here's their briefing slide.
Yeah.
And they thought so too. What are we going to do different?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important. My dad was a history teacher, and his big thing was, you've got to learn from your history so you don't make the same mistakes. And so that kind of feeds into that, is you've got to look at what everybody else did. Did it work? No.
Yeah.
Then let's not do that, or let's tweak what they did to make it work, or, whatever. But I mean, there is no perfect plan out there. I mean, in my opinion, nothing is going to be 100% perfect, but you can make it more effective.
Yeah.
you know.
I can tell you a real quick war story just to kind of pay the bills a little bit because I have done some crazy things.
Oh,
Okay,
sure,
okay.
yes.
I was going to go into this bar in Bosnia and it was full of bad people. And we were trying to figure out where the bad people were and if they had bombs and all these kind of things. That was our main job.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so we weren't sure how to pull it off because we have in our team 3 pistols and a couple of guys with M16s. It's just not a very big gun team, right?
Yeah.
Because you have
Yeah.
all these guys that have bombs and all kinds of access to stuff. And so what happens is we decide to go and, you know, we kind of array our security in a way that maybe we can just get out of there. Like our goal is to get out of there and get out and just walk away alive. And so one of the things to keep that as a possibility is I kept a hand grenade in my hand and had the pin out, right? And when the pin's out, as long as you hold on to it, it'll never blow up, right? And so that was my job. And it's my meeting. So I'm talking and I have my hands down on my lap and I'm like, this doesn't seem to be as dangerous as I thought. But meanwhile, I have this hand grenade and you never know. Maybe they're putting us on.
Yeah.
But then we started drinking. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to put this pin back in.
Oh,
yeah. Oh my God.
And I got to just do my damn job. Right. And so the security, and this is the thing, is a lesson I learned. The security that we had was less about our bombs and guns and more about this moneymaker right here and just talking to people and being the cool guy from California. And so what happened by the time we ended up leaving, first off, not full in there do well. It's not a dangerous biker bar. I mean, look, maybe those guys were dangerous in their community, but not in terms of towards us. And so I was able to high five everybody, be welcome back, come back anytime. And ultimately we did meet people that potentially could have been dangerous. And our job was to identify and figure out how to reduce the danger. Yeah. We were able to do that because of that time in that bar. But you think about that because you don't know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
No. Who's bad, who's lying to you. You may be lied to the entire time you're there and you just can't possibly know, right? And so how do you protect yourself in those situations when you're outgunned, outmanned, out-vehicled, everything, right? Like we all got to get in the same vehicle, right? Like, we had 2 vehicles. We had enough butts for seats, but you know, Humvees that aren't armored, right? Like it's just not the best getaway vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy when you get to go out and do these things.
Well, we are actually running out of time because one of us cracked our tooth and has to go get a crown.
Oh.
And we haven't even touched on like your podcast, but I'm going to give you a quick shout out on those. You do 2 different podcasts, Breaking It Down, where you talk to basically leaders in whatever field that are the best, and how did they do it? How did they become the best? And the other one is Popping the Bubble, which is about the tech industry, right? Where it's like, you know, what's coming up? What are they working on? Advice for like startups as well, and stuff like that. Let's give you a chance to do a quick shout out for those. Where can people check out your podcasts?
Plug away,
sir.
Plug away.
Yeah.
So the best thing to do if you want to watch my stuff is just go to YouTube, type in Pete A. Turner. That's the best place because I do lives every day. Actually, when I finish up with you guys, I'm going to take a shower, hit the road, and I'm going to go into LA and go talk to a very, very successful music producer who produced music for, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston. I mean, wonderful. So we do that all the time, and I love to get a chance to go and do it. So it's called the Break It Down Show. You guys can go check it out. It's on all podcast platforms, but my preference is go to YouTube and watch it, because there's so much stuff. We just recently had Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden on the show.
Wow. Yeah, that's
big fan.
That's his thing.
We've had a lot of really, really incredible people, and it's a great thing. So at Pete A. Turner on all social media, glad to talk to whomever about whatever. You can always email me at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Those are my plugs.
Awesome. And hopefully we can have you back again sometime when I'm not rocking Oragel so that I can get through this. So great. Well, thank you so much. And kind of jealous of your upcoming interview. So have fun with that.
Sweet.
Definitely. So thanks for being on.